Now look, I'm not going to make any promises here, but I will try my darndest best to not be snarky in this video. Because, yeah, based off of the topic and based off of the other information we know about this topic, we can get a little bit snarky, especially if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan. It's very easy to do that. Today we're talking about Shane Wright of the Seattle Kraken, the guy that was supposed to be first overall in the 2022 NHL Entry Draft for years. 2019, 2020, 2021, we all thought, hey, in 2022, that dude Shane Wright is going to be first. But then he didn't go first. He didn't go second either. He didn't go third. He went fourth. Shane Wright slipped from number 1 to number 4 in the 2022 NHL Draft, getting taken by Seattle and not getting taken by Montreal. This was a really big deal in the hockey world because the Habs selected Juraj Slafkovsky. And Wright, whom a lot of folks thought had franchise-defining potential, didn't even go in the top 3. Give it a few years, and Shane Wright has some very strange development with the Seattle Kraken. We've been acknowledging this throughout videos over the past few years, just the weird way the Kraken decided to develop Shane Wright. Look at this. In 2022-2023, his draft plus 1 year, he played 8 games with the Seattle Kraken, 8 games with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, 20 games with the Windsor Spitfires, 7 games with Team Canada at the World Juniors, and then he had 2 playoff runs with Windsor and Coachella Valley again. This guy had like 6 different transactions throughout the year, and that's not even including the fact that he was sent over to Kingston in the OHL and they traded his rights to Windsor. So, Wright went through maybe the strangest development path the year after he got drafted. To Seattle's credit, I will say it was very well done. They had to sit Wright out for 2 weeks in the Seattle Kraken system in order to give him AHL eligibility before sending him back down and sending him over to the World Juniors. It was very methodical, and it worked. For a guy who was supposed to be a first overall caliber stud, a franchise-defining pick in the same mold as a Jack Hughes or a Lafreniere, it was very strange seeing this guy go through all these hurdles before settling down with a certain team, but it was the path nonetheless, and heading into the season after, Shane Wright had himself a pretty good year with Coachella Valley. He was a point per game in the playoffs, and he had 47 points in 59 regular season games. Add to this 5 points in 8 Seattle Kraken games, and you have predictions as to what Wright is going to be able to do next. Now, full disclosure, Juraj Slafkovsky in last season's worth of play had a really strong year. The production he had in the NHL was around the same as to what Wright had in the AHL. Although, of course, the mathematics play into it. Wright did have a slightly better points per game, but the league differences, I think, balance it out pretty nicely. The point is, Shane Wright is in a spot where now he kind of has to make the Seattle Kraken if he wants to really put his stamp on his development and show that he has the capability of growing into the player that we thought he would be the night of the 2022 NHL Draft. This is where we get into some predictions, though. I wanted to throw out this article from Adam Prateau from September 21st. 5 NHL preseason predictions for the Flames, Oilers, Kraken, and the Pacific Division. Because if you scroll down to the 4th prediction, this is what Prateau the Hockey News writes. In Seattle, Shane Wright will begin his year as the Kraken's 4th-line center, but he quickly moves into the 3rd-line center spot a few weeks into the season and has a productive rookie year. Wright was the 4th overall pick by Seattle in 2022, but his evolution and improvement as he strives to become an NHL player has not been linear, and he had spent the last season with the American Hockey League's Coachella Valley Firebirds. This year, Wright is going to get a chance to stick with Seattle, and he's going to make the most out of it, starting the season as a 4th-line center. From there, Wright should make slow but steady improvement, and while he's not close to the point where he can be a 1st or a 2nd-line center, Wright can have a reasonable goal of improving to a 3rd-line center this season and honing his craft as an all-around impact player. In the grand scheme of things, Wright may not be a superstar at the NHL level, but if he grows into a capable 2nd or 3rd liner, Wright will make the Kraken and team brass pleased that they selected him, and we think he'll continue that journey this year. Now look, this is where I become a little bit snarky despite saying that I didn't want to be snarky in this video. Shane Wright? A 2nd or 3rd line guy? Long term? Oh boy, that's really devastating to hear when you consider the fact that Shane Wright, in some of the comments he had earlier, was talking about how he still feels he can be a generational talent. We've made this video a whole bunch, the What Happened to Shane Wright video, but the one that we had spoken about, the comments he made, yeah, that was a really big one, and if he's going out there thinking in his mind that he can still be a first-line caliber, 80, 90, maybe 100-point center at the NHL level, but you got folks in the hockey news writing about how he could only be a second or a third-line guy long-term. Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there, baby. Now, if you wanted my opinion as to how everything's going to shape up, Seattle has a pretty alright center core. I mean, Matty Beniers, you can't really go wrong with him. He's pretty strong, and I think a lot of people around the NHL and its fans love Matty Beniers. However, you just signed Chandler Stevenson. He's going to be a second-line center. You still have Jared McCann, who can play center too, but he's probably going to be on the wing for all intents and purposes. And then you have the third line with Yanni Gourde, Shane Wright, fourth line, playing with Jordan Eberle, interestingly enough. Why is Eberle on the fourth line? Is he really, like, that bad now, or what? I don't know, I've always been a fan of Jordan Eberle, but still, does Shane Wright have the capabilities of surpassing a Yanni Gourde this season? I think it's possible. I think he's good enough. The point production he had last season, if you map that out over 82 games and you put it in the NHL, it's pretty alright. Is he capable of overtaking Chandler Stevenson, though? That's the thing. I do think that Shane Wright, in a best-case scenario year, would have the capabilities of doing that, but would the Seattle Kraken be interested in giving Stevenson a lesser role after they just signed him to a big deal and brought him over in free agency? Honestly, I'd probably say no. This is why, when I think about Shane Wright as a top 6 option, other than first-line center, which he's not going to be right now because Matty Beniers has that spot on lock, would it not be reasonable to try Shane Wright out on the wing? Like, give him a few shifts at center and then play him on the wing for a good chunk of the year so that he is a top 6 guy, because Wright does have a really good ability to produce points. I mean, his goal scoring was always elite in the OHL, and his playmaking, his decision-making, how he facilitates the game in his mind, and how he opens up passing lanes for his team, that was always so good. It was why he was a lot more of a cerebral first overall pick in 2022, or not even first overall, fourth overall, excuse me, because he wouldn't really dominate the game with his speed in the same way that a Jack Hughes or a Connor McDavid would. He was a little slow, honestly, and he didn't really skate too hard. He had kind of the Josh Waugh syndrome going on there in the OHL, where in his skating and his mobility it wasn't a huge standout because it didn't really need to be. He was so smart and above everybody else's talent level and perceiving the game that he could afford to just kind of stand around, wait for the puck to come to him. Then all of a sudden, oh, he's got the puck, he makes a really nice move, he sets up a guy in front, and boom, it's in the back of the net. Like, his smarts were off the charts. Whether or not that lends itself well to an NHL center role, I'm not too sure, but it certainly would benefit itself from the wing. Like, if you gave Wright Burakovsky's spot on the right wing, then I think that's a pretty good role for him. At this point in his career, at least. The idea that he'll start out as a fourth-line guy and eventually work himself up to stabilizing in a third-line role, and then to say that he'll maybe max out as a third-line guy long-term, I think I'll disagree with the article here. I don't think Seattle Kraken fans will be happy that they drafted a third-line guy in the 4th overall spot in 2022 when other really good names were available, like Cutter Gauthier, like David Jiricek, like Pavel Mintyukov, like Frank Nazar. There are a lot of guys that could have gone this high instead if you wanted to project players that could be better than third-liners. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Shane Wright and his career path. The comments that he made last time about how he still thinks he can be a generational talent were quite noteworthy, and they got a lot of people frustrated in the comment section below, but you got writers in the hockey news projecting him as a second or third-line guy long-term. So, there is a little bit of a divide. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. How do you feel about Wright and his game, how it translates long-term, and if he could be a first-line guy? I do think that Wright has the ceiling to overtake Matty Beniers, but I do question whether or not his style of game will lend itself well to that kind of a role. I feel like Beniers' work ethic and skating with Wright's playmaking, hockey IQ, and shooting ability would be like the perfect first overall caliber guy, a legit 90, 95, 100 point player every single year. That'd be awesome, but unfortunately, these two players are two different players, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Shane Wright and his overall talent profile. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.